The reason this Pam Bondi story about getting fired is so significant is not about Pam Bondi. The Department of Justice is supposed to be an independent entity. Pam Bondi ensured that it was not. But the lesson here is that that wasn't enough. Donald Trump wants to see his political enemies prosecuted. And whether it was a grand jury or a judge or whoever it was, she lost. This is about the fact that his political enemies are still standing. And so whoever the next person is going to be in this position is going to be in the exact same spot as she was in. An impossible one. Hey, everyone, welcome to the show. So Pam Bondi is out as the Attorney General. And it was something, by the way, that was reported yesterday and denied initially. Comments about what a terrific job she's done. So it seems that the fake news media got this one right about Pam Bondi. Now, I had initially thought that I was going to make the point that Pam Bondi would go down in history as one of the worst attorney generals ever. And yet I think that is the wrong point. I think the point is that Pam Bondi has learned the lesson that complete and total fealty to Donald Trump can end up getting you in a lot of trouble. And I think she's the first person who we're seeing where that is happening. I think we're going to see others down the road, particularly when Donald Trump is no longer the president. But the reasons for her ouster are really where we need to focus. Now, one of them is a fair criticism of just incompetence, right? That has led people on both sides of the aisle to be angry at Pam Bondi. And that is her handling of the Epstein files in the case. And I don't need to go through everything because I was very critical of her at the outset of this. And she messed it up. I mean, I've got the files on my desk. We're just waiting to go through the redactions. It's going to be released, suggesting people are going to be prosecuted. Then they screw up the redactions. She screwed up the Epstein files. But it seems that's not the main reason that she's out. I mean, the three reasons that I have heard for why she's out is, number one, how she handled the Epstein files. Number two, her testimony in front of Congress in February, where, rather than answering questions, she was just going off. And number three is that she hasn't been successful enough at prosecuting Donald Trump's perceived enemies. 2 and 3 are both all about fealty to Trump, meaning in her testimony in front of Congress, she kept coming back to this idea of, oh, you're just out to get Donald Trump. You've got Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, she thought that would protect her. And by the way, I would have thought that would have protected her. And I think it would have protected her. I don't believe it's about her testimony. I think that's an excuse. The real point is that she hasn't been able to successfully prosecute Donald Trump's enemies. Why? Because they don't have evidence. That's not her fault. It's not her fault that they don't have a case against them. And that's why I am changing my headline here from Pam Bondi, one of the worst attorneys general ever, to Pam Bondi paying the price for complete and total loyalty to Donald Trump. Because it's not enough. It's not enough to try for Donald Trump. I don't know what the next person is going to be able to do. I mean, there are the illegal appointments of the U.S. attorneys. There is the fact that there appears to be a lack of evidence, etc. I mean, Trump's position is the DOJ hasn't become politicized enough. And so, despite her loyalty, she has still tried to work within the system that exists. But Donald Trump doesn't want that. I'm going to take your calls on this at 866-967-6887. But I know that a bunch of you are going to say, Dan, you supported Pam Bondi for the position. And I stand by it. And by the way, this action shows you that no matter who gets the position, they're going to be in an impossible situation. They can't create evidence that doesn't exist. They can't move forward with a case when the grand jury won't indict, at least in certain instances. And that's what Donald Trump wants. So the next person is going to be in an impossible situation. Now, speaking of next person, Todd Blanch, who's the deputy, who's now going to step in as the interim attorney general, is someone who you talk to people who worked with him years ago, and they will say, good prosecutor, straight shooter, but he has now gone into the fealty to Trump at all costs. And I'm telling you that the people who do this in the legal system, not the political system, the people who do this in the legal system are going to pay a cost. They're going to pay a price. This is a guy who last week bragged at CPAC that there is not a single man or woman at the Department of Justice who had anything to do with the prosecutions of Donald Trump, meaning they've all been fired. When the CPAC chair, Matt Schlapp, said how many prosecutors had been canned, Blanch answered over 200 tied to the Trump probes either resigned or were fired, in addition to FBI agents. And when it comes to the FBI, which takes a lot of criticism, especially because of what happened over the past few years, Director Patel has cleaned house there too, Blanch said. There's not a single man or woman with a gun, federal agent still in that organization that had anything to do with the prosecution of President Trump. Now, by saying that, you are now giving credibility to the lawsuits filed by these agents who said they were fired simply because they were assigned to particular cases. Assigned. So Todd Blanch is going to try to show that he is just as loyal and committed to Donald Trump, despite the impact it has. And when I say the impact, I mean, there's a great article in Politico called Trump's Tactics Leave Federal Prosecutors' Offices Rudderless. It's from earlier this week. Prominent federal prosecutors' offices around the country are operating without permanent leaders as the Trump administration keeps trying to install loyalists and courts keep rejecting them. The fallout continues. Prosecutors in New Jersey have been forced to seek superseding indictments. In district after district, the administration has tried to install staunch allies as U.S. attorneys without getting them confirmed by the Senate, and then keep them there past their temporary term. And when judges insist their maneuvers are invalid and the clock has run out, the administration gives the rejected prosecutor the number 2 spot and says the number 2 is now the one running the office. It's a nice little trick, except that what's happening is that cases are getting dismissed. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. It matters. And this is being led by Todd Blanch, our new interim attorney general. And there's talk that Lee Zeldin will potentially become the attorney general. I don't know what he's going to be able to do. I mean, Lee Zeldin has always seemed like a pretty good guy, well-liked, well-respected. But then again, look, that's what I said about Pam Bondi. Zeldin is now the EPA administrator. So I'm kind of trying to decide how much of this is Pam Bondi's fault, right? How much of this is that she was just put in a position? Now, there's no doubt that it was her fault with regard to the Epstein communications issue. I don't think there's anything to prosecute anyone for in Epstein. I promise you, if there was, people would be heroes for bringing those prosecutions. Just doesn't seem that they have anything. So I don't know what else could be done. But again, it's a fair criticism to say how she's handled the Epstein files has been a problem. And the problem for her is this administration doesn't care what independents or the left think. They only care what the right thinks. And the right has been getting upset at Pam Bondi as well. And that's the reason that she's out. But no one's going to be able to give Donald Trump exactly what he wants. I mean, they may be able to harass these people some more, his political enemies, you know, the Swalwells and Letitia Jameses and James Comeys of the world. They don't have the evidence. Mike is in Nevada. Mike, how you doing? What do you got?
I'm good, Dan. I just, I'm kind of just catching up on this, but what I cannot understand how Donald Trump claims to be hiring the best people that he just keeps turning over and over and over again. Pam Bondi's only mistake was saying, yes, I'll be the U.S. Attorney General, because just like anyone else in his cabinet, you get that dreaded, I have full faith and confidence in this person who's in that position. If you hear an NFL owner say that, guess what happens 2 days later? That guy's out the door, right? So it's the exact same thing with Pam Bondi. Her mistake was saying, yes, I'll be the AG. Yeah, she screwed up on this whole Epstein thing. It's terrible. Someday maybe we'll know the full story there. That's all I had to say. I love your show. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, Mike. Here's Todd Blanch, but I'm going to go back to your calls in a moment. But here's Todd Blanch at CPAC. All right. I understand we have 5 pieces of sound from him at CPAC. Let's play number 2. This is our interim Attorney General, Todd Blanch. This is number 2. Let's listen.
I represented President Trump in the Manhattan DA case and in Jack Smith's prosecutions. So I lived it every single day for 2 years, what was happening. And this country, the people in this room, they're the ones that infected change. They're the ones that said, no, you had a man that was indicted 6 separate times, counting the superseding indictments. And yet this country said, no way. So that was the first glimmer of hope that we can be better. The other things that are happening, there is not a single man or woman at the Department of Justice who had anything to do with those prosecutions.
How many have been canned?
Over 200. Over 200 either left before we came in because they knew it was coming or were fired or took early retirement. They are no longer employed by this department.
Again, these are people who were assigned to the case, had nothing to do with the decision making. Government employees who were assigned, we canned them, man. Dude, we canned them. Oh, come on. What happens to these people? What happened to the Pam Bondis who I used to have on my show all the time 20 years ago, who was a reasonable prosecutor? What happened to Todd Blanch? Are they infected with the power, with the fame, with the adulation that they're willing to sacrifice all of their basic principles? But there's going to be a price to pay. And Pam Bondi's now paid that price because loyalty gets you in the door and will keep you there. Meaning if you're not loyal, you're out for sure. But loyalty isn't enough. Apparently, Trump wants to see results that can't happen. John is in Texas. John, how you doing? What do you got?
I'm doing good, Dan. Always enjoy the discussion. Look, Pam Bondi got fired because she didn't get results. Now, you might say the results are she didn't jam anybody up from Epstein or anybody who went after Trump. But I'm going to advance a little bit broader theory than that, at least down here in Texas. I mean, the average person, I'm an electrical contracting company, so I got a lot of guys who are just working men. Mm-hmm. The average person feels as though there is a system, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't really look out for the average guy. Mm-hmm. And they want someone who is going to be their fighter. They thought when they hired Trump that he would get folks that would help clean some of that stuff up. Just pick any area. It doesn't have to be Epstein. It doesn't have to be Letitia James. I mean, just right now, it's illegal for me to collude with my competitors for charging for electrical work. Mm-hmm. But what happens at the pump where gas prices are right now? If anyone doesn't think that's illegal collusion, they're not paying attention.
So let me ask you this, John. John, you make a really fair point, sort of bigger picture, right? Which is why the public, and correct me if I'm wrong, why the public would support the ouster of someone like Pam Bondi, right? The idea that, okay, it's not results enough. But that doesn't explain, why Donald Trump is doing it, right? I mean, you don't think that Donald Trump is doing it because Pam Bondi isn't representing the little people enough, do you?
I don't. First of all, I can't testify to what Donald Trump thinks.
No, I know. I'm asking you to speculate.
But I believe he has a much narrower viewpoint. I also believe, as someone who voted for him 3 times, that he's missing some of the big picture out here, that people voted for him for lots of reasons that he has not focused on right this very second. And that would be one of them. In other words, if he goes out and jams up a bunch of people that almost got him thrown into jail, okay, well, how does that help my electricians or me or my customers? I mean, that we don't care about any of that. And I think he's forgetting that. I mean, I've chipped in a lot of money to the Republican Party, and I feel a little bit let down, and I'm not the only guy. Now, could it still work out? Sure. But, I'd like to see a champion in there who starts to work, on things like I said, a little bit broader picture.
Yeah.
And I think that would eventually, that might include a Letitia James type of person. I don't really know whether that she had the evidence or not. I mean, no one cares.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm no fan of Letitia James, as I think anyone who listens to the show knows. But you still got to have evidence against someone, and I apply this to everybody. And what you can't do, for example, what they're trying to do now with Eric Swalwell is it sounds like they're going to release investigative files, which are never done, just in an effort to hurt him politically. But I think to your point is going to be, well, that's not going to get support from the rank and file who voted for Trump, believing that he was going to be looking out for, you call it the little guy, call it the everyman, whatever the case may be. Really good points, John. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Let's go to Eric in New York. Eric, what do you got?
Hey, so I was just thinking that Pam Bondi has that hearing coming up on the 14th. That just crossed my mind. It's something to think about, but that, and probably she's just not aggressive enough in the media. Trump's a big media focused, always has been, back on his days on TV and such. So just between those 2 points, sorry, I got to go. But thanks so much. Love the show.
Thank you.
Just,
all right. So April, it's an interesting point, which is that Pam Bondi is scheduled to testify coming up. And my guess is that the members of Congress are still going to say she should have to testify. We'll see if she says, well, I'm no longer the attorney general, so I'm not required to testify anymore. It's interesting. Stephen is in California. Stephen, how you doing? What do you got?
How you doing, Dan? Thank you for taking my call. I have a different perspective, and I think that you might see some light on this. Trump is a ratings guy. It's all about him, all about him. And I think that Kristi Noem was canned in part by the fact that ICE was bringing down Trump's ratings. All right? And then because of the debacle there. And now you have Bondi, who could not suppress the Epstein and so forth and prosecute. His ratings were going down because of her. And so he got rid of her. I think what's coming next is Hegseth, because he has hinted that Hegseth has been the instigator of all this. But all of this brings down his ratings, and he's a ratings guy. And it bothers him to no end that he is in the 30s. He may say it's fake news, but I think there is a point to be made.
It's an interesting point, Stephen. Thank you. Let's go to Jack in North Carolina. Jack, how you doing? What's going on?
Good afternoon, Dan. How are you?
Good, thanks. What do you got?
Well, I'm thinking if the president hit a home run last night and there was nothing but glowing reviews and accolades in the media this morning, that Bondi wouldn't be fired today. No, I'm not a conspiracist. I'm just media manipulation. He's changed the subject. I think he screwed the pooch last night, but we're not talking about it. We're talking about.
Well, that's a really interesting. It's a really interesting point, Jack, and I would be willing to entertain it, except that we learned before the speech that Bondi was probably out. The reporting started coming out last night before the speech that Bondi was probably out. So, and look, here's the thing about his speech, right? It's not that it was so terrible. It's just that it was nothing new, right? So it's not that it's going to get like awful reviews. It was basically like, oh, we interrupted to hear regurgitation of things that we've heard before. That's it. So I guess those two things make me question your theory. I like your theory, but I disagree with it because A, we knew before the speech started that Bondi was probably out. And B, the speech wasn't that bad that everyone's like, oh, my God, it was terrible. You disagree with me?
No, I didn't. I was not clued into the Bondi rumors prior to the speech. But that makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah. Jack, thank you. Appreciate it. Let's go to Megan in Kentucky. Megan, how you doing? What's going on?
Hey, Dan, I'm doing well. We've missed you here and missed you on Patrol Live, too. So I hope you had a good rest.
Thank you. I'll be back. Actually, we're off this weekend on Patrol, but we're back on the 10th of April. So I'll see you then. Yeah.
Yeah, we get a good old highlight reel, which I won't complain too much about.
Yeah.
My main question for you is about the timing. Mm-hmm. I think you, as well as others, and I had sort of been expecting that Bondi would be out after the midterms. But I was wondering if you thought that this timing had anything to do with possible changing of the likelihood that Democrats could take over the Senate, and what that might mean for potential candidates, and if they were going to rush any sort of confirmation process. And then, when the next person inevitably fails to meet Trump's standards, what that would mean if he's actually would get rid of them if the Democrats did control the Senate.
Well, I guess I'd say two things. First, if it's Lee Zeldin, I think he's going to pass pretty easily. I think if it's Todd Blanch, despite Todd Blanch's sort of ridiculous comments that he's made, I think he will pass in the Senate as well. So I think of the two people who are being discussed, I don't think either one of them would have trouble passing in the Senate. Your point, I guess, is, well, what if they waited? Would they have trouble getting confirmation? They might, but I don't know. I think at that point, if that's what your concern is, you're going to have to fire just about everyone in the cabinet, who you're thinking about getting rid of before the midterms. Now, again, losing the Senate still probably a long shot, but an interesting theory, nevertheless. Scott is in Virginia. Scott, how you doing? What's going on?
Pretty good. It wouldn't be hard to figure out that the president does not want Bondi to testify before that committee under oath about the Epstein files. A lot of pressure there. And I'm not sure the fact that she's no longer Attorney General vitiates the subpoena which was issued to her in her individual capacity. Mm-hmm. So what are you going to see in a couple of weeks? We're hearing reports already that she's been maneuvering with Comer, with the chairman of the committee, so she doesn't have to appear. What do you think will happen?
Well, I mean, look, here's the thing. I would expect that they'll work something out, right? Because Trump doesn't want an embarrassment. Republicans are in control of the House, et cetera. So I'd expect they're going to work something out. But even if she has to testify, look at what she did last time, right? She just obfuscated. She didn't answer questions. She didn't answer details. She could just do that again. I don't know that she's so afraid of having to testify that would be that big a deal for her. Melissa's in New Jersey. Melissa, how you doing? What's going on?
I'm okay. So similar to what some other people have said, I'm kind of curious about the potential testifying in front of Congress, because I don't think she has any leg to stand on to not show up. Whether she will or not, who knows? But I want to harken back to a comment that you already made about, that there will be a price to pay for all of the ineffectual nature of the role she's played, as well as Kristi Noem, as well as a bunch of others, because I don't see any of them paying a price. The only price that has been paid is the people of this country, both in blood, treasure, and money. Right. All of the money they've spent and wasted of taxpayer dollars with no consequence at all. And the only thing they care about, and quite honestly, I hope it all stays in the news from now until the midterms, whether the war ends or the war doesn't end, which is also a crime and was done under total false pretenses. And again, who's paying for that? Nobody. And all the corruption,
So your initial point was that there's no price to pay for her being ineffectual. Right. That's not why she's losing her job. And that's not why Kristi Noem lost her job. They weren't just ineffective. I would say that they weren't just incompetent. They ended up being a net negative for Trump. Everything for Donald Trump is through the prism of what is best for Donald Trump. And both of them ended up being a net negative. Now, it is true that in the short term, Pam Bondi will probably be invited to speak at right-wing events and make some nice money at speaking events. She might even get appointed to something else, the same way that he did with Kristi Noem for a soft landing there. But on the legal front, this is why Pam Bondi was trying so hard, and I think Todd Blanch is going to continue to try so hard to prevent state bar associations from taking actions against government officials, because they want to make sure there's no oversight. And yet, the way the legal system works is there is oversight. The bar associations do have oversight when it comes to your legal license. And as a result, I think that there will be prices to pay as more comes out about exactly what happened and didn't happen in this administration with this DOJ in particular. I don't think there'll be a price to pay for Kristi Noem. I mean, look, she's paying the price with the ridiculously embarrassing stuff about her husband that's come out. But I don't think she's going to pay a sort of, look, I'll say it this way. Kristi Noem came into this as a kind of a right-wing darling, right? She's leaving a bit like a loser. Pam Bondi's going to have the same thing. Now, Pam Bondi wasn't as prominent as Kristi Noem was coming in, but Pam Bondi, I think, is going to pay a price. I think Todd Blanch is going to pay a price, and that's why the legal system is different from political. Melissa, thank you. Gary's in California. Gary, what do you got?
My comment is about the owner of the electrical business.
Yes.
He was saying the regular guys aren't getting what they want. And I think the bigger picture than just focusing on Bondi, and she needs to be held accountable, not to Trump, to us, and she should never work again. But I think we let people like her off the hook saying she's doing Trump's dealings. And then for the electrician, he needs to start maybe looking inward at his own team. I'm a centrist, and I look at both like you do. I love your commentary. And I think for his guys, if they want to make a difference, they really should be looking at their own side's politicians and calling up better people that will definitely do their dealings, not for the top 1%ers or special interests.
Yeah, the problem with that, Gary, is that what Donald Trump clearly wants, and this is why I'm going to insist that the single biggest reason Pam Bondi lost her job was the fact that Donald Trump is not satisfied with the results that have occurred with regard to his political enemies, meaning the Epstein stuff softened the ground for it. But without, if they were having success and James Comey was on trial right now, I don't think Pam Bondi would have lost her job. But all right, so that's, I was glad that I was able to come back to today's show from my vacation to talk about this, because it's a really important, obviously, topic and something we talk about here a lot. But there's also another important topic. I'm going to take a break here, and I'm going to come back, and we're going to talk about it, which is, this executive order that happened from the president with regard to voting restrictions, et cetera, and how the vote should occur and go through the mail, et cetera.